So I'm going to walk through the portfolio I put together years ago for my dream company, Scaled Composites. I started off with just a picture on the front cover, a picture of myself and my name, and then next I had a page, biographical sketch. Now, they probably didn't read that much. I also had some snapshots out of my resume. So the first few pages were just kind of some information. But then I devoted one page to each of the major projects that I thought were relevant that they might be interested in. So for example, I had done research on turbulence modeling. Now, anybody who's done turbulence modeling will look at this image and know exactly what that image is about. And so the idea of the portfolio is that you're going to put in a whole bunch of different projects and just kind of hoping that they resonate with your future employer. Now, most likely, you're going into a field of something that you're interested in, and so the people that are hiring you or that you'll be working with have similar interests. And so the types of things you put in this portfolio are most likely going to resonate with them simply because you've worked on similar things. So this first one is if they've done any computational fluid dynamics or turbulence modeling, that might have caught their interest. Now, I have a bunch of different projects on here, and I don't expect them to read the text unless they're interested. So this next one is, I was involved in the design of a small UAV. If that's something that catches their interest, then they might come up here and learn more about the actual UAV that I worked on. I wrote some software, some aerodynamic software. I've looked at the tails or the empennage of the Predator and looked at the differences in the design. I've written a flight simulator. Here's another small UAV that I worked on. I've worked on wind turbines, the aerodynamics of wind turbines. I've worked on this airframe called Puma for a company called AeroVironment. I've done some analytic aerodynamic work. I'm proficient in CAD. I've written a book. I wrote this book for my mom. She's afraid of flying, and I had put this book together just kind of for fun to try to appease her fears of flying. So I put it in here just to show some level of creativity. I'd written a genetic algorithm. I've done some art. Here's a sample, again, just showing some creativity. And then very last page, I have a list of service and extracurricular activities. And I suppose I could have put some pictures in here as well. Hopefully, as I've gone through this, you've had some ideas of something that you could do in your portfolio. And hopefully, you improve upon this. I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it or the best way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to put a portfolio together, and I've seen my students take different approaches over the years. But the bottom line is that you want to convey through images something to your employer about yourself. And I do that a page at a time, and I have it set up so they can just flip through this. And anything that catches their attention, then they can look more into. I mentioned earlier that I built this portfolio for my dream employer, which was Scaled Composites. Now, Scaled Composites was a company that was very hard to get into. Their hiring process is pretty competitive. And I was told later that somebody saw my portfolio on a desk, and they picked it up and they flipped through it. Just in a matter of a few seconds, they put it back down and they said, "We need more people like this." Now, I don't think I was anyone particularly special, but I had conveyed more information to that person than anyone else had through their resume. And so it set me apart in the pack. I did end up getting a job from them. I worked for them for a few years and had a great time there. Before we go on, let me show you a more recent version of my portfolio. I've recently updated it so that because I have a new group of people that I talk to as an academic as I talk about research opportunities and ideas. So this is my new cover page. Again, I start with my resume. and then I get into different projects that I've worked on as an academic. Now these images are a little bit more academic, and these explanations may be a little bit more academic, but I show, this is who I was working with when I worked on it. Here's the title of the project, and they can read more about it if it's something that they're interested in. Notice that on each page I have a group of images, and I also have a paragraph or a few paragraphs maybe explaining that project. So again, I don't expect them to read all of this, but I hope that they'll just flip through and see something that looks interesting. So for example, here's a parabolic flap compared to a traditional flap. What has he done with that? So they could learn more about it if they like. From this image, they might see that I know how to do CFD, computational fluid dynamics. I know how to correlate data from experimental and fit equations through it. I've worked on flapping flight. I've looked at ground effect. This is an image of an aircraft landing and how you do the computation to estimate what the aerodynamics are like as it lands. Here's some more turbulence modeling. And then CFD, rotorcraft type things. I've written software. Here's a bunch of information about that software. Here's some screenshots from it. Here are possible future research topics. So these are some things that I've looked at that I would like to look more into. So for example, landing on an aircraft carrier or refueling an aircraft. For bio-inspired flight, here's some ideas that I have here. And so you get the idea. I can keep flipping through these things, but the idea is you want to help this person get to know you very rapidly by giving them a variety of things to look at that cover your history, so that by the time they've flipped through this, they feel like they know who you are to a pretty high level. Building a resume is going to require some time and also some money. So let's talk about that next.